And we're live. Hey guys, what's up, y'all? It's your girl Jay Sharin here, and today it's just me and y'all. So let's chop. So I have been totally missing Career Day. So as an author, as of a children's book, I have gone to several different schools, a lot across several different counties, and I'm able to kind of talk to the kids about what I do, how I speak, and what that looks like. So let's talk a little bit about that. I went back to my alma mater, and I'll never forget. I went one year, and the next year I came back and I read a different book. I think I read a different book. I feel like I did. I feel like I read the new book that's about to come out. So I have a couple of different books. If you've been following me on any social media, I have like three books coming out. I did not plan it this way. The children's book has been in the works for I don't know. It's been in the works for so long. My illustrator doesn't even use that computer anymore. So when he finally was like, "Dude," like when he sent it over, I was like, "Dude, you gotta take your watermark off." And he is like, "Oh Lord," he's like, "Let's pray." He's like, "'Cause I ain't opened this computer since the pandemic." So if just in case you're wondering how long we've been in this pandemic, I literally went into labor 2 days before the pandemic. So every time I see that whole, "This was our last normal week 2 years ago, a year ago, blah, 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 blah." Not only was it our last summer week that long ago, I was literally in the hospital thinking, if you've ever seen the movie Outbreak, my brother's dad used to own this movie. If you've ever seen the movie Outbreak, that's what I thought I was coming out of the hospital to. I thought people had started turning to zombies. I felt like the way my husband described what was happening. When I came out of the hospital and seen this dude just jogging, no shirt on, no mask, no nothing, I thought, oh, well, it's not as bad as I thought. I thought I was coming out to the apocalypse. Like the way my husband, I'm telling you, and to be fair to him, every time he left and had to come back into the hospital, he had to get tested. So, and this was back before they realized, well, we really don't have to go all the way up in your membrane to get your mucus. You could just blow some down, and that's enough to test if you're positive or negative. So he was like one of the first people to get tested because literally we were in the hospital. Um, I was having my second kid. We were in the hospital and everybody flew in. And his aunt, who's former military, was like, "I'm telling y'all, I've been watching Dr. Fauci. This thing is about to get bad. You need to stock up." And so I always say what's interesting is I just felt like I was supposed to go to Sam's and stock up. And I was actually closing out my caseload because I was going to have to transfer because I was having a baby. Little did I know this was about to change the way we did things forever. I didn't know this was coming, but literally because of my pregnancy, I was closing things out and wrapping things up. And me and my partner, who owns Sharon and Danny with me, we have been talking about, do we do in person? Do we do face to face? We're moms, we have kids, we have very full lives. Like, do we really want to try to meet in face to face meetings for consultations when everything is kind of moving digital? And that decision was kind of made for us by the time we kicked off Shireen and Danny. So, in case you don't know, oh, sorry, let me fix that. Sharon and Danny is a nonprofit that I started. It's a consultation business that we do. And so we service people in the coaching aspect. She has a degree in counseling, bachelor's degree in counseling. What's interesting is that now schools are also, because I had never heard of a bachelor's in counseling before, but they're also combining it with life coaching. So she has the option at her particular school if she can just do the mental health track, which carries you to master's and PhD if you want, or you can get that track plus add on the certification for life coaching. And so there's this big debate in the mental health community, mental health versus life coaching, which is better, which is not. What's interesting is I always say that doctors didn't want therapists, master's level clinicians in this field, and fought hard for us not to be in this field for a long time. And I feel like sometimes as therapists, this is kind of what we're doing in coaching. As a therapist, in a sense, I have started to lean more into coaching because I also have an educational background, and my agency specifically worked with community support individuals, which you had therapists. If the client was really, really intense, you had two people work it. You have the therapist who's processing the feelings, who's working through the trauma, who's building the rapport, who's connecting with the individual, and then you have the CSI, which is what we call them, doing the skill building services. So if I say, hey, Let's process your feelings and track your patterns. They're teaching you to track your patterns. What patterns do you have? What do your patterns look like? What does your negative thinking look like? What thoughts are you having that come up? They're teaching you what those skills look like to be able to work through that process. And so that's kind of how I differentiate for me coaching and therapy. Coaching is more of the skill building, the educational piece, the training course. A lot of therapists do both, and I think they don't even realize it because that was the interesting thing they always told us. If you have CSIs, then you're allowed to, like, as a therapist, you can still do CSI work. But it's interesting because as a therapist, writing a CSI note is different because you cannot say process. You can't say that you process feelings or you use motivate. You cannot use those words. It has to be skill based. And so they said it's sometimes easier to go back and write a CSI note as a therapist than it is to do it the other way around, where I've only wrote CSI notes and I got to try to write notes in tune with how a therapist would write them. Um, so anyway, we have this consultation business. We really, really want people. My goal is to help people set a healthy foundation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I love career day. So circling all the way back to me, going back to my alma mater. I've been a speaker there. I've spoke at graduation there. That was like my goal, two goals. Speak it, because we always bring alumni back to speak. So speak at my alma mater, TED Talk. Those are like, oh, Pulitzer Prize. So my husband walks around now. He's like, oh, Pulitzer Prize. Like if you ever want motivation, you let my husband like hype you up because he's going to bother you into it. So you're like, let me just do this. So he'll stop. So he walks around calling it a Pulitzer, like Pulitzer Prize. Like he'll call me a Pulitzer Prize, which of course we all know the person anyway. So I went back to my alma mater after going there twice. Right. Somebody asked what kind of confessions do I have? I guess I have to confess today since it's me. So you have to stick around to the end to see what kind of confession that I have, because since it's me, I got to confess something. So it's interesting because when I went back to my alma mater to speak again with my new book, the girls have formulated a publishing company. And I thought, this is why representation for every industry matters. So a couple of things. What I really need you to do is, if you are kind of on the fence about your career, there's something called the Occupational Handbook. I looked at it when I took career counseling as a therapist. It tells you every career, at least for the United States, every career and salary that exists. There are things you wouldn't think of. Like when my husband went back to talk to my alma mater, it was the last time we got to do career day. We did it together. I volunteered him, asked him to come back and talk because I didn't grow up knowing about project managers. I'm sorry, not project managers, product managers. I didn't grow up knowing about them. And I felt like a lot of times I keep seeing this meme about we need to teach finances and budgeting and checking and not algebra 2. But my husband has literally used algebra 2 at his job. His former role. He's in a different role now, but his role about a year or two back, he literally was like, dude, you'll never guess what I used to say. And I'm like, what? He's like, a quadratic formula. I was like, no, you didn't. Nobody uses those for real. But you know what's happening is because we don't understand in what ways math works and runs our world. If you're like me and you're all about the literature and they force you to take math classes to be able to be competitive for the university you wanted to get into, you know what I mean? You don't understand how when people major in math, they can pretty much get any job they want. I've noticed that too. A lot of my friends that major in mathematics, they do not, literally, it's the only major I feel you can major and it be general, like you just mathematics. That's it. Like you don't have to have that's it. You don't have to have a second degree. You don't have to have a specialization. Literally, if you're like, I got a degree in mathematics, that's all I got. You can get all kinds of jobs. I don't feel like there's any limit. I've never heard them say that whatever, I mean, they've gone into any kind of job. They have no limits. And so the occupational handbook is something that isn't I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it, but it's out there. So use the occupational handbook. I use this method with one of my when I was going through grad school with one of my relatives, like it's my favorite cousin. I have two favorite cousins and they already know. I mean, the family knows this is not a secret. I have two favorite cousins. If you're in my family, I already know who my two favorite cousins are. They're younger than me and I love them to death. One came to school by me, get ready to graduate. One is out of state where I'm from. And so when he was just trying to figure out what he wanted to do, I was going through career counseling class. I'm like, perfect, let's try this out. I don't know if this is going to work. We're going to try it out. And I gave him a method that he can use repeatedly over and over. So even when he goes to something and he's like, "I want to try something new." Right now he's coaching. He's doing a phenomenal job with the boys he coaches. And he just can repeat this process. And so what I said was explore every career you've ever thought about doing. When you're young, when you're little, there was something you wanted to do that you may or may not be doing now. For me, I always wanted to be a psychologist. Now I find myself in the middle of trying to figure out if I really want to get a PhD for psychology or do I want to get a PhD in counseling and supervision because I love to train people. And I really, it is good money in testing. And that's another thing. Like if you are able to do evaluations and testing, being a licensed psychologist, there are not a lot of ones that look like me. Although sometimes for different things, you have to send your kids to get tested. So I wrote a post about making it normalized that we need our kids evaluated. So let me give you a couple of tips about that. Just because somebody evaluates your kid doesn't mean you have to do anything with it. You don't. You can also decline evaluations if you'd like, but if you are evaluated, I'm telling you, as somebody who used to be the person to give out the disabilities, to used to be able to give out the accommodations, that's what I mean, not give out disabilities, but I was a disabilities coordinator who would write up or make sure they were implemented in class, the accommodations according to the Disabilities Americans with Disability Act, ADA, and Section 504. So in these particular instances, you are allowed accommodations, and kids probably don't think it's fair. I know one of my friends posted his student was like, "Yay for you being able to turn a page." But what people don't understand is, and this is I actually do workshops about this because as a teacher, it feels maybe frustrating, right? This kid gets specialized treatment when in reality, this kid's brain is not working the same as everybody else's brain, right? They have a different kind of thought process. Nobody is the same, it's individualistic. And so this kid's brain does different things. And so, in order to make sure that their brain and thinking and way that they learn is equitable on the same playing field as people who don't think like that, that we tend to just say are more common, then we put these things in place called accommodations. So, like if you have ADHD, if you have an IEP, an individual education plan, if you have anything like that, you can get specific things to help your kid, and you can get specific things at work. Nobody knows that. Like when you're in school, you can get double time, but that's why they ask that question that everybody probably skips on your resume. Do you have a disability? Why? Because they have to accommodate you, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's medical. Some of you guys are walking around here with medical issues, needing more time for your stuff, whether it's grief, whether it's mental health. All of those things play a factor in how you learn. And so, what I used to tell my students is if you never use them, have them in place, please. Like if you never use the evaluation, have it done. Because who's to say your kid's not going to need it to college? Because then you're in college trying to find somebody to do an evaluation, and it's a whole long process that you should have started in elementary school. So that's my tidbit about that. When you're trying to be out there looking for certain things, go ahead and give yourself the best chance to be successful, right? So the occupational handbook is one thing I say. So anything that you can think that you want to do, look it up. It's got the salary, it's got the job titles. You want to be somebody that talks to trees all day. I don't know. Look it up. What does it pay? Oh, snap, it only pays $10,000 a year. Can't live off that. Maybe I need to be somebody that cuts, talks to trees, but also does. You know what I mean? Look up all the careers and then narrow it down. Make a list, narrow it down to your top three. Research the top three, the salary, how long it's going to take you to get to where you want to be in those careers. Research those top three to see if it's really viable options. Now, you may say, oh, I like these two. This one's got to go. Replace it with another one, right? Always keep three. Replace it with another one. Research it. But if you have these two, go ahead and see what you need to do to get there and start that process. Now you can replace it with another one because what ends up happening sometimes is you get through the process, you're like, I either don't have time, I don't like it, or it's not a good fit, right? So go ahead and get the three. And as you go through this research process, you can and do three. If it's a case, do 3 a week. I always say, give yourself a week to do the three, right? Like them, don't like them, put them to the side, do 3 more until you get to a place that you're comfortable starting the process with 3 of them, right? Or just one. And during this process, what I found was sometimes it narrows itself down. Well, I can't do this because it's a 3-year process. I don't have time. I have a family. I can't do this because it doesn't pay enough. I can't do this because I don't like it. A lot of you guys are talking people into having careers they don't like, but you don't know that you don't like it because you haven't tried it out. So if you try it out, you find out you don't like it, but that's why you can kind of keep a list. You can go back to your list. You know what? I got in this 6 months. I hate this thing. Let me go ahead and figure out if I want to do something else. Totally fine, especially the younger you are. If you know what's funny is I follow Anthony O'Neill. I'm give him a little bit of break because y'all know these he's more of a financial expert that has started to talk about dating, but he came out with his story about he was engaged at one point. He's kind of struggling. I have to go watch the whole thing. So this is definitely me just going off of only his post and not watching the whole thing. But he was talking about struggling with relationships, almost thinking like maybe he's never going to find a wife, right? And I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe that you're listening to him. I could probably tell him why he's struggling with finding a wife because sometimes it's just a couple of little tweaks that you need, right? So finding a job is kind of the same way. You want a fit. When you think, we don't think about that as far as career and job, but when I was in career counseling, we took ACA, we took the BEX, we took the ENJP. I can't think of what Myers Briggs. I think this I could be confusing because I haven't looked at them in years. So don't even at me. You're a therapist. Don't start that junk, right? Because really, psychologists are the ones that give these tests unless you do pharmacology, then you're allowed to do them. So I haven't personally looked at any of these tests for years. But you're talking the ACE, you're talking the CPSS, you're talking the Columbia Suicide Scale. That's what I've been looking at for 3 years. All right. So the career counseling ones I haven't looked at as much, but there are a bunch of ones out. You Google them. Myers Briggs is the biggest one. Everybody's talking about what are your ENPJ? I don't even remember what I am. Holland's hexagram is my favorite, if I'm honest, because it has it's 5 areas, and it talks about in these areas there are certain careers, and a lot of times they're linked, right? And so it has these areas, and if you don't like sales, then you're probably not going to like these other 10 careers either. So it helps you narrow down what areas and content. If you're not a builder, right? If you don't like building things, engineering is not a good career for you. I don't care how much money you make. The one thing I used to see at college that used to really, really bother me a lot is that men would get into majors for money, right? And then they wouldn't finish the majors because nobody taught them to combine both. If you like to make money, what's interesting, one of my professors was talking about accounting, that most people don't go into accounting, but I had a couple of friends that were accounting majors in college. One specifically used his degree. I remember he became a general manager of a pizza company. I don't think he does that anymore, but for years, he made good money at it. So for years, that's what he did. So you don't know what all you can do with these degrees if you don't explore. And I think sometimes we get into this place where we don't really know what's out there. So we lean into what we've always been told is out there. Doctor, lawyer. Nobody knows what a product manager is, product owner is. I didn't know any of these terms before my husband got into the fintech field. Like, what is that? Nobody ever came to my school and said that. Nobody gave me options for these are the different ways you could be a therapist. My husband makes the joke all the time that I should be a mechanical engineer because I pretty much build whatever in the house. Like if it comes through my son's bunk beds, they were going to hire. The only thing I couldn't build that daggone bike. And I feel like had we not broken the brakes, I would have eventually got it. But by the time my brother had he's like, bro, these brakes are like, we're going to have them retwist the brakes. So that was the only thing that ever came through this house that I did. And I only did, we were literally at the brakes. I don't want my child dying or nothing, of course. So brakes are important. Like had it been the handlebars, I'd have figured that out. Not even that, because that's still important. But it had been something minor, I would have figured it out. But when we're talking brakes, I ain't playing with no brakes. So we took it to Dick's. 4 months later, it's out of Dick's purgatory. But you know what? They gave it to us for free. They were like, Jesus, we're so sorry. It's been a long, long time. We didn't call you. We apologize. You're good. So I'll take a free bike fixture. I'll take a free bike fixture any day if that's your apology. I'm good on that. And so exploring these careers really, really is helpful to understanding your personality, because if you're a person that likes to walk around and talk to people, probably not going to be a good accountant for long. But what you can do is be a project manager and accountant, where you talk to people all day long and manage their projects or manage the programs for like it's other areas. If you like numbers, how do you marry it with some other things you do? So I want you to also examine that. What do you like in your personality, and how is that going to fit into what you long-term want to do? I thought it was exciting that these girls created their own publishing company, because when I was little, I only used to see, and this reminds me of a story. I only used to see authors from Scholastic. So when I grew up, I'm like, I'm going to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a journalist. I ended up going into psychology because the school that I initially went to didn't have. I wanted to go to a mass communications program. And when I went there, they were like, oh, yeah, we have mass communications. Now, what my husband told me later was I misread the they're not objectives. What are they? But basically, it's the program where it tells you what's in the program and how the program will help you and what benefits you have of the program and the different ways you can use your degree. And he said I misread it because he's had friends that had that major at the school we were at, and they went into journalism. That ain't what that said to be. It said speaking, and as in talk. I mean, I guess that's what I'm doing now. So when I think about it, I could have pursued that major there, but I did not, and I was young. So this is also helpful to your college student. They're going to change majors. Stop getting on there for that crap. Like, that makes me so upset because high school doesn't prepare you to pick a major. It prepares you to redo your first 2 years of college. It doesn't prepare you. So if you're not having career days, if you're not taking your kids to college tours, if you're not introducing them to what majors they could be, you are not allowed, in my opinion, to get mad when they change a major. Because a lot of times when you get into the major is when you figure out this isn't for me. I used to love to teach. I still teach. I don't do it in the, my husband just made the joke. You're the most unteacher teacher I've ever seen in my life. People talk about unschool. My husband calls me the unteacher. He has never even heard the term unschool. He calls me the unteacher because he's like, you always want to teach. You always want to train, but you don't want to be confined to the classroom. And when I did my 18 hours of kind of a mini internship for teaching, I was like, oh, I ain't doing this. I mean, the kids were in first grade taking 15 standardized tests a year. Nah, bro, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. I'm not on subscribe to that. I'm not doing it. So I changed my major. My mother was having a cow. Of course, as a teacher, she wanted me to be one. To psychology, I go. And I ended up changing to psychology. And Dr. Josh, I still don't know his last name. I think it starts with an N, but he was like one of the best psychology professors I had. He had his own practice, so that introduced me to a practice. His wife had her own practice, and they were both psychologists. And so that introduced me to entrepreneurship, a major I hadn't heard before. And I will say this: it didn't introduce me to entrepreneurship. I take that back. The school that I attended, Green Forest Christian Academy, introduced me to entrepreneurship because everybody's parent that I ran into, that's probably my introduction to technology. Everybody's parent had their own computer software business. I would see moms that were stay-at-home moms driving. At the time, Navigators were huge. They were all driving Navigators. So I was like, what do you do that you can come in the middle of the day and do whatever you want at this school, but you're driving a Navigator? Like, in my mind, owning your own business must be freedom. So I've always wanted to do that. But we also had career week all week long. I actually got to meet Amanda Davis. She came to our school. There was another reporter from Channel 46 that came to our school. I remember being young, meeting Cynthia McKinney. I was introduced to a myriad of professions. So in my mind now, when I think school board, I don't think it's impossible for me to run, because I do think about it sometimes. My son said, hey, you should run for senator. And I told him next year we'll go through the process, which I guess that's this year. Maybe he'll forget. I don't want to run for senator. But I told him we would go through the process to see how it works. So I may apply just to go through the process to see how it works so he knows how it works, because maybe one day he will run for senator. My husband's family has a lot of experience with running for office. And so you get to see these different careers in action and ask the questions, because I think that's what's really, really important is you get to ask these questions. Is it worth it? What degrees do you need? Do I need a degree? What certification do you need? I think a lot of times with the arts industry, we don't really push education the way we should. There's a radio DJ. He talked about his son is well into the music industry by now, but when his son was graduating, he talked about his son who wanted to do music. He's always loved music. And so they sent him to Berkeley. I think that sometimes we underestimate the education for even things that are creative, that people can teach you ways and structures to do things, like to be able to hone in whatever your individualistic gifts and talents are. You may need a base. And so that's something that I love to give people is a base. So 1, the occupational handbook. 2, make a list. Pick 3, then research that list that you're making and then start the process. Is it application process? Is it school? Are you going to have time to do this? I am huge, huge, huge on timelines. If you ever talk to me, if I ever coach you, one of the things that's on going to come up at some point is patterns and timelines. These things I have found build effective communication within yourself because you're telling yourself, this is by this date, I need this done. By this date, this has to happen. I don't have to do this. Sometimes we carry around so much in our brain that if I say, I don't really need to do this till April, but I'm worrying about it in January, I can give my brain a break. I'm all for that because I work with a lot of students who are neurodiverse. And the one thing I always tell them, your brain doesn't have to do that much work. Whatever you can, and this is for anybody, but really, especially if your brain is always running, give your brain a break. You don't have to hold so much in. So a timeline helps you understand where you're about to fall. Do I really need to be thinking about it in February, or I can wait till April or March or May? Right? So give yourself a timeline so that you can start the process. Is it a case this is going to be feasible for you? Like, how far along are you in your career that you have already? Can you use that knowledge? Can you pivot? Can it connect to another industry? Or are you just starting out? If you're just starting out, you're in college, you're trying to figure out a major, that's the best time to do it because now you're doing this process so that you can pick a major to be able to one day build a life or a career or a lifestyle off of. Cardi B gave a really good synopsis about business. She said, if you're in college, pick up one business class. Pick up a business class. She said, because anything that you do in life, she said you can use that knowledge and create a business if you need to. If something's not working out, if something's not happening, she said, or even if you're working for a business, you have a better understanding about how business works if you pick up that one course. She said, while you're there, take a business class. She said, guess what? I didn't. And now I got to pay people to manage my business, and which is a whole lot of money when if I knew what I was doing, I could manage it myself or at least be aware of what they're doing. Pick up a business class. I always say, pick up different courses. You have electives. Who's to say those electives have to be aerobics or swimming, right? Pick a course from a major. I took an evidence and procedure class. I was laughing about that now. But guess what? Judge Daniels taught that daggum class. And I still remember Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, that if you try to trap me by gathering evidence in a way you're not supposed to, and you get evidence to prove that I murdered somebody, which I have not. Trust me, I've had 12,000 background checks because I was a school-based therapist. So I was like, oh, at one point I was getting fingerprinted once a month. Like it was getting ridiculous because we were going into new school systems. Each school system had their process. My agency already had their process. I was like, oh, fingerprint number 8, fingerprint number 10, right? But if you get evidence that I murdered somebody, but it wasn't the correct way that you got it, all that's got to be thrown out. You can't hold me to, and now you have to start from scratch. So I learned a lot of my laws and rights taking Judge Daniels and evidence and procedure. She used to make this joke. She said, why does it always say the reasonable man? Because that was everything in our evidence and procedure class. It had to be if it was according to the reasonable man. And we said, we don't know, Judge Daniels, why? She said, because women are always reasonable. And she laughed. Right. And so take a course or class. Even if you're not in college, you have a community college that's cheaper. Sometimes you have different people that offer these courses. Take a course or a class in something you like so that you can figure this out. I know this new generation, they're not paying 60 grand for a college. So colleges, if you're listening to this, you're going to have to figure something out. Nobody wants to pay 60 grand and 30 of that be a repeat of the last 4 years of your life. We were told to do it. It's like we watched our parents, right? We watched them and how corporate America treated them. We're like, we ain't doing that. So now you got Facebook and Google turning corporate America on their heads for how they do things, a lot of different things, right? The next generation saw us go to college, get this debt, get blamed for this debt. Some of these predatory lending practices they did with student loans, y'all wouldn't be allowed to do that for houses or cars. Matter of fact, when they did it, and then they tanked the mortgage industry, they had to go back and get help. And everybody helped the people that tanked the mortgage industry out. The car industry, when those things tanked, they got help. Student loans, it's like, oh, you should have been at 18, you should have been wise enough to make that decision. Y'all got to be kidding me with this. At 18, y'all don't want to let people make the decision to drink or do anything else at 18, but you think I should be smart enough to sign $60,000 loan papers for my education when you're telling me this is you almost feel trapped. It's the only way that you can make money. Nobody was saying anything different. So do your research. If you want to do something with your hands, can you be a welder? Right? Can you be a builder? Can you, if you want to be a nurse, can you be a CNA? You know what I mean? What can you do that can, if you don't want to spend 4 years learning something, can you get a certificate? Can you get an associate's? Can you go to community college and just take a couple of courses in it? Find the best path for you, is my last bit of advice. Find the best path for you, and only you can create that. What's going to end up happening is you're going to have a journey. It's not a monolith. That is like my catchphrase for the year. Things are not a monolith, right? And I think it comes from the fact that I remember a couple of years ago when they did the DSM-5, they decided that autism and Asperger's are now on a spectrum and not different. And so to me, everybody's on the spectrum from neurodiversity to what we consider normative, but that's a different conversation. Everything is on this line. It's not the same. It's a journey. What does your journey look like to you? People aren't always going to understand your journey. They're not. They love you. They want the best for you. But sometimes what's inside of you is calling to you and nobody else. So you're not going to be able to figure that out. You're going to have to figure that out. They're not going to have the answers. They're going to have answers that work for them. They're going to have answers they want to see you do. I remember one of my mentors saying that she got all the way through in her engineering program. This always stuck with me because the prayer she prayed at the end of this was really impactful to me. I always remembered it. And I probably am getting it wrong now because I haven't said it in a while. But she said she got all the way to engineering, master's degree, top university in the United States, getting her master's. And then she said she realized she didn't want to do this, nor did she feel called to do this. And she said, she talked to her mom. Her mom said, well, everybody pushed this engineering. I always thought teacher. She said, and that she's like, oh my goodness. And to be honest, she taught me in something, and she's a phenomenal teacher. I was very ticked when they took her away and gave me a different teacher, but she is a great teacher. And so she said, she asked God, please don't let my years be wasted. I want to do what you want to do, but also I don't want to waste what I have learned. How I need something in between. And so she ended up being a consultant. And I think what happens sometimes is we get into this space where we have this knowledge, we have these things, we have this content. How do we marry where we're going next if it's not what we want to do now? And I think that's what you have to ask yourself. So asking yourself these questions early: occupational handbook, figuring out what you want to do, researching your top choices, right? And then being able to take this journey to see what really, really fits you in your life. Almost think of it as a marriage. Like if anybody talks about, I love relationships, I love dating, but I think of terms, we engage life in these ways. What's a good fit, right? Because if you don't like building, what you like, and if you don't like math, engineering probably isn't going to be a good fit for you. But if you like building or hammering things, welding maybe. You know what I mean? So what is it that you really like? If you don't like math, but you like building, a different career besides engineering may be something you look into. So what is it? Your journey, what does it say? When you do this research, what is it going to look like? And what is it going to feel like to you? All right, guys, let's wrap this up. I'm trying to think. What do I want to confess? I wish you guys were in the chat so y'all could just ask me, because I didn't even think about a confession. Look, I about everybody else confessing, and I don't even have one. I mean, we're talking about career stuff. I don't really have I do have one about careers. All right, guys. So y'all, when I was in college, I got fired, y'all. Lord, I got fired. I've been working since 13. I ain't never got fired. But I got fired. She was so mad at me. She left me a voicemail and fired me on the voicemail. So, guys, I was teaching at a place in Columbus. I don't even know if that daycare so. But matter of fact, Brooke, and Candace, guys. We got me, Brooke, and Candace. Brooke started working there first, then me, then Candace. And so I like the 1-year-old room, but they use it. I didn't like this apart. They always use the 1-year-old room as a training room. I thought that was a terrible idea because kids that age are really impressionable. So you shouldn't use one room as always having new people in and out, because 1 years old is when they are trying to understand security. And that's really when, if you don't see them for a while, maybe that's why they did it. If you don't see them for a while, they're like, don't touch me. Right. So they're really struggling with that. So, but she used that room as a try. Everybody knew when to go in your room first, and then she'd move you wherever she wanted you after like a month or two. But it wasn't like there was a consistent teacher in their training. It was whoever, like it was always that room. And maybe it was always that room that needed, no, because she'd move you to, so anyway, always that room. So she moved me to twos. If you ever hire me in daycare, don't you dare put me to your room. Do not do that junk. I don't care if I'm good at it. At my last daycare, they had me down there. I was like, oh my God, we put you down there. You're the only one that don't. I said, "Don't y'all put me down there again." It's the reason why I only apply for pre-K positions. So put me down there where kids is running around like I she put me into your room. And so she had her favorites. My roommate Brooke was one of them, but I was not. I was probably like everywhere I go, you either love me or hate me. I'm kind of controversial, and I feel like that's just kind of how I'm in life sometimes. Like she liked me some days I got on her nerves. And I don't think sometimes she was very clear on her instructions, and I was just really working. I was at this time, I think I had changed my major. So now I'm not even a teacher trying to get experience. I'm like a psychology major just trying to pay my bills, even though I love kids. I do, and I'm very good with them. But 2-year-olds, 2 years, 2 years. So she had her favorite. So she never made her work. So I was technically, it's supposed to be two teachers in that classroom. She took her Halloween decoration shopping and left me in the classroom at nap time. Now, nap time is one thing, but when you know you ain't potty trained on your 2-year-olds and you left me in the classroom with 15 of them, boy, get out of here. 15 2-year-olds. She left me in the classroom with 15 2-year-olds. It was snack time and they were waking up. So I had to potty them because they're not potty trained. So I'm changing diapers. It's snack time. So I'm trying to feed them snack. And I got cots everywhere. You can't have cots just laying around. Like that's defects comes in and cots laying around. It's a hazard. You can't just have cots laying around if they're not asleep. So I'm doing all of this. And so finally I get ticked and I call her and I'm like, look, you need to bring my help back now. Like, I don't care where y'all are or what you're doing. You need to bring help back now. Like I have 15 2-year-olds getting up from nap. You do whatever you want after I get them nap and snacking outside. You need to come back. I don't care where y'all are. You need to come back. And so she doesn't come back. Probably need to check her voicemail. She don't care because I just call and she not answering nothing. I think I call her on my cell phone. I must have because she didn't answer. If it was a school, I think she would answer anyway. So when the girl finally comes back, by now I'm like over it. Right. I mean, one of the kids wanted snack immediately. He's taken the whole entire juice. He's poured the juice out. Snack got wet. My purse got wet. The floor was a sticky mess. I didn't clean it up. I didn't. I left that juice right on the floor. It is 15 2-year-olds. I now have to leave the room to get a mop. There's nothing in the room for real but bleach water to clean it up. But that doesn't clean up like soap water and bleach water. But I didn't have anything but paper towels. And that means I would also had to get on the floor. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not even done changing diapers. So I left that juice. I moved my purse, took the stuff out. I left the juice. I changed their diapers. We had snack and I took them outside. I don't even know if I picked up all the cots. I'm not sure I took them outside, but I saw my help come in, look at the classroom being trash, and she left back out. And she didn't come back in to help me. And eventually, I think we came in. I was in a much better place after we had kind of came in and came outside. She may have come to help. You know what? I made her come help. So I asked somebody to stand in my classroom while we were outside. And I said, I need such and such. But why? I said, because I need help. And she was like, but why? I mean, such and such was in there. She's pregnant. She's pregnant and she's fine. I said, I don't care. I'm not her. And she didn't have them after nap time. She had them during morning circle, eating, nap, sending help. So I made her come in. So I cleaned the classroom. I go outside with the kids. So I cleaned the classroom and I went home. That night I was in the choir. She called me at Friday night. I didn't listen to that daggone voicemail. I didn't want to hear from her. You left me in a room by myself with 15 2-year-olds. Anybody knows 15 unpotty trained 2-year-olds that are getting up from nap? That is like, you're asking for trouble. 15 2-year-olds. So she called me, left voicemail. I answered. So Monday I called her for a ride to work. And she will pick me and my roommate up. We could walk. It's about a 30-minute walk. 10-minute drive, 15-minute drive. So I call her and she's like, listen to your voicemail. And I'm like, dude, something happened where her voicemail got erased. And it probably was a good thing, but something happened to her voice. I was like, I don't have a voice for me. Just tell me whatever it is you want to say. And she's like, I don't want you to work for me anymore. I said, cool. And hung up the phone. And that was it. The only time I've ever gotten fired in my life. I have been in some not fired. But usually by the time you're trying to let me go, it's that, and I'll wrap this up. It's that because, and this is to me is a stereotype, because I have asked for help and because I don't let your company completely fall or I don't let it fall, it doesn't look like I need help and you don't send it. So I have learned if you want help, you gotta let stuff fall. Now it's a risky game. People may not agree with me. I don't care. But as an African American woman, that's a risky game to play. Because they're going to say, oh, well, we knew it anyway, or they're going to stereotype me now, right? She's not doing the work right. She's not competent, blah, 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 blah. But I can go back when I asked you for help several times. And sometimes they do this to women in general. but especially African American women, because I've watched it play out where I have begged for help, I've gotten none, and then I watched Susie Q down the hall. This is a random name I'm using. Susie Q down the hall asks for help, and she gets all the help she needs because she looks like she's drowning. And I'm literally saying, if you don't save me, I will drown. And it's like, well, you're not drowning yet, so I let it fall. And then that moment, that's what I learned. Because I let that classroom fall, she fired me. She didn't care that I was in that room and she was out of license and regulations. Anybody tell you 15 to one person, even though on paper you say you had two or three, the ratio I think is 1 to 6, maybe 1 to 7. If it's 1 to 7, I still was supposed to have two other teachers in there. I was by myself. Even if it was 1 to 8, it's supposed to be two teachers in there. It was just me. It's 1 to 15. It's a reason they have those regulations. So that's my confession. I got fired before. I got I got fired before. And I have not gotten fired since. I've resigned, I've quit, I've moved jobs, I've changed jobs. And now I work for myself. But that is my confession. All right, guys. Hopefully, you got some good tips about setting a really healthy foundation, or even if you have to reset your foundation for career advancement, journey, start, reshipping, reshaping. I love the career day. If you have career questions, I definitely know a couple of career coaches that are coaching people really well to help them find the best career fit. I don't do career coaching. I don't do career coaching. So if you need a career coach, I can link you with a couple that I know. I'm more of the relationship dating, but I do have, because I had to take that course. And so in therapy, we have to do career counseling. It's something I have done. I am good at doing it. So I can give you some pointers and some tips, a couple of consultation services, but that is not something that I am equipped to do. I don't do that resume writing, none of that. I can link you with a couple of different resources. Definitely got you on that. So good luck with all you guys' career journey. Thank you for just hanging out with me, talking to me, letting me chop it up with y'all today and chat with y'all today, listening to my crazy confession about when I got fired back in college. All right, guys, it's your girl, Jason Rand. Talk to you later. Bye.